Happy Monday, everybody, where not only did the time spring forward, so did this podcast because Paul forgot about something.
Yeah, thank you for changing the schedule for me.
You know, anything for you, Paul, just because it's you.
Appreciate it.
Yep. It's going to be a busy week, I think.
You think so?
I think so.
GDC.
Yeah, there's that stuff. Microsoft has their, what? You probably can't hear that,
the
but
Inside Xbox or something.
my Amazon Echo is telling me about the Western Antilles Islands for some
reason. Yeah.
It is apparently reading the whole entire Wikipedia page because it will not. Alexa, stop. Jesus. Good God. I was reading the entire page, but yeah. So we got GDC next week. Some stuff probably coming this week, I would think. Then we've got Microsoft's Inside Xbox event, which is very conveniently timed for 5 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. A little discombobulated here because we're doing this at the wrong time and I'm not really ready. But there's a couple things I wanted to talk to you about. I just want to try not to forget about either one of them. But what you just said about Alexa is kind of interesting because over the weekend I asked Google via the phone with my voice what something was, and it answered. And then I said, neat. And I hit the home button to go away from it. And it kept talking. It was exactly what you just experienced.
Yeah.
Like, seriously. Well, except that I asked the question, I guess, in this case. Yeah, they're getting a little chatty, those things, huh? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. I will tell you that our use of the Echo has dropped significantly since we put all of our stuff into the HomeKit app.
Oh.
Because now both of my wife and I, we can use our fancy-dancy Inspector Gadget watches to just control everything. So you can just tap on it and scroll to what you need and do it without having to open your yapper. Take a hint, Amazon. Stop talking.
I do think there's a future for a kind of a dashboard type interface on a smart display, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I know that probably kind of exists already on both Google and Amazon, but it's a good idea. But it's like multi-touch on a laptop. I think different people prefer doing things different ways. Obviously, having both makes tons of sense.
I haven't looked to see if this is possible yet, but I bet it is.
What's that?
Amazon lets third parties integrate with HomeKit, right? I wonder if there's a HomeKit app for Windows.
Oh, like in the I'm sure there's a mom and pop thing in the store that's terrible that you could find.
Mom and pop thing.
Yeah,
because there are third party. Well, I guess I could use Homebridge. I didn't even think about using that, I guess, but interesting. There was something else that had me. Oh, I know what else I was going to talk to you about, or at least bring up. Saturday, and because I can't change the background image now because whatever reason it disconnects after 3.5 seconds. Google's new controller for their supposed streaming service that they're going to announce at GDC, which is next week, showed up in a patent online.
Right.
Which is, it's a controller. Although the one thing that I don't like about it is you don't realize this until I guess if you're coming from PlayStation, it's not that big of a deal.
I knew you were going to do this. I just grabbed my PlayStation controller to do the same thing.
Yep. See, the offset thumbsticks is a massive ergonomic improvement over the PlayStation one.
I agree totally.
And Google, based on their patent, has never used an Xbox controller because they are mimicking the thumbstick layout from the PlayStation controller, which to me is not.
Yeah, now, there are people who play PlayStation every day and they just get used to it. Obviously, it's the way it is. It's fine, But going back and forth between the two, as I have at times, it's very difficult to make that transition. And I'm also reminded of the PS Vita, and then what was the predecessor? Just PSP, PlayStation Portable?
Go? No, it might have been.
I think
PlayStation
PSP,
Portable.
I think.
Yeah.
So the original PSP, if I'm remembering correctly, what do you call that? It's not a D-pad. It's a hat or what's that? Thumbstick.
Joystick, yeah.
Thumbstick. So we'll call it thumbstick. I want to say the original PSP only had one thumbstick, which made it not very good for first-person shooters, right? Because what you need is the ability to move and look separately, right? Otherwise, you're doing the Doom thing where the guy's just kind of moving around. And then when they came out with the PS Vita, or possibly a second-gen PSP, I don't remember the exact etymology there, They did add the second thumbstick, which was an improvement. But again, Sony, for whatever reason, it positions them in such a way. I find it to be uncomfortable. I have big hands. That might be something to do with it too. Who knows? I mean, maybe that layout is better for small hands or something. I'm not really sure. But when you think about your two hands on the controller, I don't know. Yeah, but that's funny you said that, because the first thing I did when I saw that patent picture, which you posted, was to look down at the Xbox controller and be like, nope, it doesn't match up, and it's the Sony one. Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see. The question is there more hardware? Because the rumors, I think the rumors just said that there was going to be Google hardware at the event, which a controller is technically hardware. The question is there a console or anything else, like a Chromecast type device that goes with it?
I know these things kind of exist, but they're not universally supported. I've always thought that the notion of it's basically a controller with a frame on the top that holds a phone or maybe even a small tablet makes tons of sense, because modern phones and iPads and smartphones and so forth all have the processing power to render amazing 3D games. But, playing those games with your fingers on a screen is terrible. I don't know how anyone does that, especially for certain classes of games like shooters. A portable gaming machine like that, and again, I know they exist. I know they do, but I just, with universal compatibility across games would be very interesting to me.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah,
it would be. So we will see what gets announced over here the next couple days and weeks. But the next 2 weeks, because GDC I think is technically next week, but typically companies will announce their stuff ahead of time.
Okay.
Because the GDC is a lot of sessions and stuff like that. So
yeah, I mean, that image you have behind you is Microsoft announced a bunch of ID at Xbox games, 13 of them, and then they're going to promote, 24 of them or something in their booth at GDC. That's another thing. I've often talked about doing this every day like a robot. I sit here and I play Call of Duty over and over again, and I have my reasons for that. Mostly it's of an addictive nature, but I often think to myself, like, there are two things that I think would be kind of interesting as just almost as exercises. And unfortunately, in the business we're in, like the notion of Android guy tries iPhone for a week, you're never going to believe what he found, that kind of thing. But I think about using just Xbox Game Pass, like exclusively, just play games that are available on that, because it would be amazing, Yeah. And the other thing that I think would be really valuable, unfortunately, you probably have to spend money a lot of the time, is just playing ID at Xbox games, right? Because some of the very best games on consoles, or just in gaming in general, have come up via these independent developers. And there's a huge divide between like a Call of Duty type game, which requires the same amount of money that it takes to make a Hollywood blockbuster, meaning the same size team, all these specialists in different areas and all this stuff. And yet you can make fairly, complex games. It doesn't have to be a simple game, but often simpler games that are just fun to play as an individual or as a small team, And I feel like I absolutely do give that kind of thing short thrift personally. I don't mean to, but I know that there's awesome stuff out there. And I don't know, it's a time thing too. I mean, Call of Duty is easy for me because it's not my job. I can just kind of jump in and screw around for a few minutes and then leave and go back to work or whatever. But I don't know. It's something I do think about a lot.
Yeah. And there was, what was it? Crackdown 2 is now available for free. Crackdown 1 has been available for free.
Is still free. I checked on that. Yeah.
So the
Crackdown 1's an awesome game.
The crazy thing is, for $1, Paul, for $1, you can play Crackdown 1, 2, and 3
right now. Yeah, exactly. For $1. Yeah, for $1. Yeah, that's right. In fact, I think the deal right now is for $2, you could do it for 2 months, right? Because I think there was a promotion recently that kind of doubled it. But it's I know. And yet every day, like I said, like a complete zombie, I turn on the Xbox eventually and I just play Call of Duty again.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of, I've been playing the heck out of Apex Legends. But it's the same type of thing, though, is you can just jump on, play a game 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah. Be out. Yeah. That's the thing. Right. In other words, there are really good games out there that require attention, you know, and that's something I just don't have during the day for sure. And then at night, it's not like I'm trying to imagine unless my wife went out, I guess. I mean, the conversation that would be like, hey, I think I'm going to play video games for a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I just try to imagine how that would go down. Like, yeah, no, you're not. Yeah. You know?
And then she's like, it's Tuesday at 2:30. Shouldn't you be working?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the best part about my wife starting to work from home several years ago. The realization she would have that I do absolutely nothing all day long. You know?
Well, it's about time for that 30-minute nap, and then I'll follow that up by 20 minutes of gaming, and then maybe I'll write a post. Yeah. So the other thing too is, I know I've been mentioning this a lot, mostly just because I wrote it up as a scoop that the Master Chief Collection was coming to PC in the very near future. Oddly enough, the now listing for it online says it's available for Xbox One, no surprise there, and the Surface Hub now.
Surface Hub.
Yeah, I'm not even joking.
Okay.
It says available on Xbox One and Surface Hub.
Well, that's a different way to collaborate. Yeah, I guess.
I guess maybe you can use those pens and like type.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I think that more so means that it's coming to other platforms here in the near future. Right. Possibly tomorrow at 5 p.m. We'll find out.
Okay.
So, there
Exciting.
You go. Yeah.
All right, so two things just real quick.
Yep.
I started experimenting with 1Password, and the reason I chose that was I've not used it before. I know you recommend it and use it yourself. And you had mentioned that it works as a replacement for the password, the keychain-based password vault or whatever they call it on iOS. And so I was curious if it worked this way on Android, and I believe it does. So the point of this isn't so much to switch to a password manager, although there are absolutely reasons to do that, and I may in fact do it. I imported all my stuff from Chrome. I switched it on both Android and iOS. But the reason I'm doing this and the reason I'm mentioning it is because I raised the question last week about Edge and how that would affect this kind of a thing. Because if you manage passwords centrally somehow, how does that work? So the two sides to this are, if you use a password manager, I think, I'm not 100% done testing this on either platform, but obviously that will obviate the problem. You can switch between browsers that abandon, it won't matter because your passwords will be managed from a third-party app or service or whatever, so that will be fine. But it is also possible, I don't know if they're going to do this, but Microsoft could make Edge a password manager on both Android and iOS. And you have to go into settings, and switch away from the, the built-in one. Although, by the way, you probably know this, but on Apple, you can actually have multiple password managers valid. So if you wanted to continue using iCloud or whatever they call it, the keychain, you could actually leave that enabled. I turned that off because I wanted to see what that looked like. But anyways, that's one thing I was looking at. The other one you might have seen over the weekend, I mentioned my desire for a new podcast app. I've been using Pocket Cast for years. I paid for it on multiple platforms. I've really enjoyed the app and I use it a lot. I like the way that it syncs, listens between devices because I use multiple devices. But in the latest version, this app is really convoluted now, and I don't know what the heck they did to it, but it makes no sense. And it kind of reminds me of Spotify. Like, Spotify is an app that, like, I understand because it's a music app and I get it, but the way that they do, like, the screens and things, and even like the language they use, like and I notice this with podcasts, like, you don't subscribe to a podcast, you follow a podcast, like, because you follow an artist, I guess, or whatever it is. And it's like, I don't know. I find it to be a little quirky and weird. I don't know if I'm going to ask you a question in a second, but I think the app I'm eventually going to end up with, assuming they fix it, is Google Podcasts, because right now they don't have, it feels like the stupidest thing. You can't say download the 5 most recent episodes always, that kind of basic functionality, which you can do everywhere else, including, by the way, in Google Play Music. So I'm curious. Anyway, I guess I'll just ask you straight up. I mean, what do you use for podcasts? If anything, do you listen to podcasts? You ready
for the most boring answer ever?
Is it going to be Apple Podcasts?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
Only because it's very similar to that. You open it up and you can see the podcast and it pushes it to them. I don't listen to a lot of them either. And most of them are like way outside of tech. Like there's a history one, there's a golf one that I listen to, and then there's
you're on
there's
iOS.
also a NASA one.
My issue is I need this to work everywhere, and because I go back and forth, and it's aggravating.
You can just buy a Mac.
Just buy a Mac.
An iPhone and an Apple Watch.
Yeah. Right. Well, okay. So, yeah, I'm not even going to look at that one, unfortunately. But, podcasts, I know I go back and forth on this stuff. And there are periods of time when if I'm listening to something through headphones, whatever it might be, it oftentimes I'll go through this period of time where it's like audiobooks, and occasionally podcasts. Right now, I've been like kind of binging like you do on Netflix, a particular podcast, and I'm listening to it out of order because it doesn't have to be listened to in order. I'm kind of cherry picking the ones I want to listen to. Like years ago when I started listening to How Did This Get Made, I did the same thing. And so understanding which ones you've listened to, which ones you haven't, which ones are downloaded, which ones aren't, that kind of thing is key. And they've completely screwed that stuff up in podcasts. Like it's amazing. It's like the most basic functionality. It's just completely screwed up. And I'm like heading to this crash because you know how it is. I don't know how you guys watch TV or if you watch TV or whatever, but like if you were to binge watch a show that's awesome, like on Netflix, like say you went through like Broadchurch or something or Narcos or whatever, it's of such high quality that when it ends, you have to scramble to find something else, and there is nothing else as good as that thing, right? So maybe you're watching like these British crime procedurals, like my wife and I watch a lot of those. We have burned through all of the good ones. So now we're left with the really bad ones, like Paranoid, or I can't think of the names of any of these other things. But you watch like these kind of tier 2 or 3 kind of things, and they're sort of like the ones you like, but you're like, like it's just the worst. And I'm about to reach that point with this podcast where I'm going to basically finish all the stuff I want to listen to, and then it's going to be like, now what? Now what?
You could go back and listen to old episodes of First Ring Daily.
Right? Can you imagine who would ever listen to this show?
Just go
Do
back
people
and listen.
actually listen to this show?
I'll tell you what. If you hate the sound of your own voice, get into podcasting because you get not only listen to yourself but see yourself every single day.
Oh, it's the best.
Yeah,
it's the best. And for someone who apparently can't stop talking, I cannot stand the sound of my voice.
Well, that makes two of us.
My greatest hypocrisy.
I don't know. I could think of a couple others. All right. Well, I know you've got a meeting, and so you got anything else for today?
No, I think that's most of it. How about you?
No.
Enjoying the extra hour of sunlight in the afternoon, perhaps. Will that be?
Maybe. I needed to warm up, which it's going to do this week, although I think it's going to rain. But it's supposed to get up into the seven digits here on Thursday.
Really?
Yeah, but it's supposed to be raining all day. But that's the first
get rid of the
year.
snow.
It's the first one, because after that it'll become more frequent. And then
we already had the little red things on the trees, right? Which means spring is proceeding normally, which it did not do last year.
That is correct.
Looking forward to that happening.
That is absolutely correct. And that means golf season is getting closer, and I can go out there and shank balls into the woods and pretend that buying a new driver will fix my slice.
Exactly.
So
you need a smart driver.
All right, everybody, that wraps it up for today. We'll catch you right back here tomorrow on Hopefully Spring is Coming Daily.